You are listening to Book Clips, a podcast where authors and narrators expose you to excerpts from different books. You can find the show and more by searching for The Lesbian Talk Show on iTunes, Podbean, or Stitcher.
Jen Silver, reading from Arc Over Time, Book 2 of the Starling Hill trilogy. At the start of Chapter 1, archaeology professor Dr. Catherine Moss has come to London for a job interview at a well-known university. A move to London would make her lover, Denise Sullivan, very happy, as it would put an end to their long-distance relationship. But Catherine isn't sure she wants to move to the city, as she loves living in the northern part of the country and has had a job offer from a university there. This section I'm reading follows on from a fallout with Den the night before. Catherine has had a sleepless night and decides she needs to see Den before going back home. So goes to her house, which she hasn't visited before. It was only 7:30, but she decided to take a chance that one of the occupants would be up and about. The doorbell sounded a chime in the hallway. The door was opened by a young man, late 30s she would have guessed, smartly dressed, in a neatly pressed button-down white shirt and light-coloured chinos, not too different from her own outfit. He looked at her inquiringly, probably thought she was canvassing for the local elections. "Hi, sorry to bother you. Is Den in?" Yes, I think so." He smiled suddenly. "You must be Catherine." "I'm Henry. Please, do come in." Catherine followed him down a hallway to a bright kitchen at the back of the house. French windows opened out onto a small, well-kept garden. The smell of freshly brewed coffee hit her nostrils. "Paul and I were just going to have breakfast. Would you care to join us?" "Yes, that would be lovely, thank you." "Please, have a seat." He indicated the kitchen table, which was set for two. Den hadn't told her anything about her housemates. She would have expected a less conventional household. The kitchen she found herself in had all the trappings of a television chef's dreams. Henry bustled about, setting a place for her, and placing a very welcome mug of coffee in front of her. "Den's not likely to surface for a while yet," he said as he started to scramble eggs. "How did you know who I was?" she asked. "Not hard to guess. She talks about you a lot. And we read about you, of course." Of course. Last year's excavations at Starling Hill had made headline news with the feature articles written by Den. "So you have me at a disadvantage. I don't know anything about you." Well, I'm hurt. That's her off my Christmas card list." He gave her a camp flip of his wrist and then turned his attention back to the eggs. Another young man appeared from the garden. "Got a few chives, but we've finished the parsley." "Hello." He stopped to look at Catherine. "Oh my, it's Dr. Moss, isn't it?" He dropped the handful of chives on the counter next to Henry and extended his other hand towards her. She took it and nodded. "I'm Paul. I guess you've met Henry. So, to what do we owe the pleasure?" He helped himself to coffee from the pot and sat down in the chair opposite. "Den and I had a bit of a fallout last night. I thought I should see her before heading home." "Ah, right. Do you want me to go and wake her up?" "No, I mean, there's no rush. My train doesn't leave until 3. "Great. So, tell us, how did it feel when you first realized who was buried at Starling Hill?" "Paul?" Henry placed a plate of perfectly scrambled eggs with brown toast on the side in front of her. "Let the poor woman eat before you start grilling her." "Please, go ahead, Catherine. I'll just do our toast." Catherine found she was very hungry. She was halfway through her eggs by the time Henry sat down with his own plate. "These eggs are wonderful," she said. "Do you get them locally?" Only after she asked did she realize that was a stupid question. She wasn't in the country now. "Well, as local as anything round here. They're supposedly farm fresh." "Free range," added Paul. They were a handsome couple, Catherine thought. Paul was more casually dressed, wearing cut-off denim shorts and a tank top that showed off his pecs. "You'll have to fill me in on what you two do, as Den has told me nothing about you." "I'm a pilot," Henry said. "Long-haul flights, so it's a treat to be home for a few days now." "And I'm a kept man," said Paul lightly. "Hardly." Henry smiled fondly at him. "He's a ward nurse at St. Thomas's." "Isn't there another person living here, apart from Den, that is?" Oh yeah, Steph. She's a gardener. Must tell her we need more parsley. Anyway, she shot off to Brighton after work yesterday. Somebody's 40th birthday bash, I think. Paul started again, gently quizzing Catherine about last year's dig. They both seemed interested, so she humoured them and talked easily about the excavation and the main findings. The skeletons will be on show at the British Museum later this year, she told them. An exhibition is being prepared. Finally, some recognition for the Queen of the Brigantes. They had all enjoyed a second round of coffee when Den appeared in the doorway, wearing only a scruffy t-shirt and black boxer shorts. Her hair was standing on end, and Catherine's heart lurched at the sight of her lover's long limbs on display. I could murder a coffee hen. She stopped, seeing Catherine staring at her. Oh, Christ. Her cheeks flamed, and she turned on her heel. They heard her thumping back up the stairs. Catherine bit her lip. She stood up, but Paul put a restraining hand on her arm. I think she might need a bit of time. I have seen her looking worse. Henry laughed. It's her bedroom she's concerned about. If she wasn't expecting a royal visit, it'll be a tip. She sat back down and leant back in her chair. Now that the time had come, she wasn't sure what she was going to say to Den. With all the excitement of the past year, the excavation, the discoveries, the constant requests for talks, as well as her ongoing responsibilities at the university, she hadn't really thought about the implications of moving. The idea of uprooting was suddenly more frightening than appealing. A new location would mean having to register with a new doctor, dentist, and finding a hairdresser she liked. Was she really prepared to go through all that at her age? Another voice in her head was saying, go for it, you only live once. And that was a philosophy she'd always promoted. Would you like help with the dishes? She asked Henry as he began to clear the plates. No, definitely not. Den's room is on the top floor. Just follow all the stairs up. He seemed to have sensed her anxiety. Okay, thanks for breakfast. It was absolutely delicious. Much better than I would have got at the hotel. Go on. He poured another coffee. And take this up. She's not worth talking to and she's just had a hit of caffeine. Catherine smiled at him and took the mug. She followed the stairs to the top of the house. No wonder Den was in good shape if she climbed these several times a day. The door had a hand-painted sign on it, Den's Den. Cute, but not quite the image she had of her lover. Pausing to catch her breath, Catherine raised her hand to knock. Den opened the door. Unsmiling, she stood aside to let Catherine enter. She had hastily thrown on the jeans she'd been wearing the night before and tidied the rest of the clothing on the floor into a laundry basket. Newspapers were now piled up in the corner by her desk, and a quick flick of the duvet made the bed look more respectable. She had just opened the window when Catherine knocked. Glancing around, she decided it would have to do. Catherine handed her a mug of coffee. Henry thought you might need this, she said. Too right, Den muttered. She watched the professor over the rim of the mug as she glanced around the room, assessing the size of the mess that constituted Den's life. I guess I should have phoned. Yeah. Mind if I sit down? Those stairs are a killer. Fine. Make yourself at home. Den realised belatedly that she hadn't combed her hair. The boys seem nice. Yeah, they are. Sipping at her coffee, Den tried to work out what Catherine was trying to say. The shock of seeing her in the kitchen was fading, and being replaced with the anger of the night before. Catherine looked up at her. She had chosen to sit on the bed. Den, I'm sorry. Last night, I don't know, this isn't like me. I just don't know whether I'm doing the right thing. Tears were now streaming freely down her face. Den put her mug down and sat next to her. This wasn't a Catherine she knew. The professor was always so much in control of her emotions. Softening, she put her arm around the crying woman's shoulders. Hey, come on. She reached over and removed Catherine's glasses. I'm sorry, too. I guess I've been putting pressure on you. Feeling Catherine slowly relax against her chest, her breathing calming, Den moved a hand to lift her face up to hers. She kissed her closed eyes first, tracing the salty tear tracks down her wet cheeks. Their lips met, and Catherine's parted to let her explore with her tongue. The professor's moans encouraged Catherine to move her hands down to her breasts. Several hours later, both naked and sexually sated, Catherine glanced at the time on the clock by the bed. I guess I'm going to miss my train, she said. Do you need to go back today? No, I might be tempted to stay the night. Den grinned at her. What, in this squat? She asked playfully. It's a nice house. I would have cleaned up if I'd known you were coming, Den said more seriously. Catherine reached up and tugged at her hair. I'm glad you didn't. It's just you. With no further encouragement needed, Den rolled over on top of her and pinned her to the bed. Well, if you're not going anywhere, how about another round? Have some respect for these old bones. Den kissed her deeply before answering. I have every respect for your bones, Professor. Jen Silver, reading from Arc Over Time, Book 2 of the Starling Hill trilogy.
This was an episode of Book Clips. Check out the show notes for more on this book. And it would be great if you would rate the show and subscribe to the Lesbian Talk Show podcast channel for more woman-centered content. If you are an author of lesbian fiction, then send us your reading. You can find out how on the lesbiantalkshow.com/reading.